that you had referred,
Yeah.
which were from Life Divine, is there any other reference from Life Divine that you think, besides those two paragraphs, would be relevant for what we've studied that you would suggest?
Prima facie, I don't remember any other reference from the Life Divine, but there are other references to this. Um, One is in the Upanishad volume, CWSA 18, Kena and other Upanishads. There also he speaks about the elements, and basically what he says is there that you should not think that this air is this air and this ether is this ether. So that is another one. Other than this, I don't remember, except that the whole of Sankhya, I mean, whatever is there um, relevant to the Sankhya, what was asked about the Sankhya by the disciples, some discussion would be there in Letters on Yoga, Volume 1. But that is very simple. If we cover this, then we don't need to read that.
Sure, thanks.
Yeah, welcome. Okay. So, Dhaval Bhai, Jeeti, Yogesh, Rai Kishore, Harish, Ritu Gandhi, Sarita. Okay. Harish, would you like to read?
Yeah, sure. Where do I have to read it from?
13 other principles from here.
One second. Just read. 13 other principles constitute the subjective aspect of the energy, of the cosmic energy, buddhi or mahat, ahankara, manas, and its 10 sense functions, 5 of knowledge, 5 of action. Manas, mind, is the original sense which perceives all objects and reacts upon them, for it has at once an inferent and an efferent activity, receives by perception what the Gita calls the outward touches of things, Bahya Sparsha, and so forms its idea of the world and exercises its reactions of active vitality. But it specializes its most ordinary functions of reception by aid of the five perceptive senses of hearing, touch, sight, taste, and smell, which make the five properties of things their respective objects, and specializes certain necessary, operate senses which operate for speech, locomotion, the seizing of things, ejection, and generation. Buddhi, the discriminating principle, is at once intelligence and will. It is it is that power in nature which discriminates and coordinates. Ahankara, the ego sense, is the subjective principle in buddhi by which the Purusha is induced to identify himself with Prakriti and her activities. But these subjective principles are themselves as mechanical, as much a part of the inconscient energy as those which constitute her objective operations. If we find it difficult to realize how intelligence and will can be properties of the mechanical inconscient and themselves mechanical, jada, we have only to remember that modern science itself has been driven to the same conclusion. Even in the mechanical action of the atom, there is a power which can only be called an inconscient will. And in all the works of nature, that pervading will does inconsciently the works of intelligence. What we call mental intelligence is precisely the same thing in its essence as that which discriminates and coordinates subconsciously in all the activities of the material universe and conscious mind itself. Science has tried to demonstrate is only a result and transcript of the mechanical action of the inconscient. But Sankhya explains what modern science leaves in obscurity, the process by which the mechanical and inconscient takes on the appearance of consciousness, it is because of the reflection of Prakriti in Purusha. The light of consciousness of the soul is attributed to the workings of the mechanical energy, and it is thus that the Purusha, observing nature as the witness and forgetting himself, is deluded with the idea generated in her that it is he who thinks, feels, wills, acts, while all the time the operation of thinking, feeling, willing, acting is conducted really by her and her three modes, and not by himself at all. To get rid of this delusion is the first step towards the liberation of the soul from nature and her works.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hmm. I'm just looking for the shlokas where, okay, they will come when they will come. Right. So 13 other principles, he says, total are 24. Out of the 24, we have covered 11 so far. First is the Avyakta. Again, referring back to the shloka from the 13th chapter, where the 24 are mentioned. Mahabhutanyahankaro buddhiravyaktamev cha indriyani dashaikam cha panchachendriya gochara. Mahabhutani ahankaro Mahabhutanyahankaro buddhi avyaktam eva cha indriyani dashaikam cha 11 indriyas, panchachendriya gochara, and the 5 in which the indriyas move, right? You could also say chara meaning move, go meaning consciousness in the original sense of the Vedic word, basically in which the awareness moves, right? So out of them, we have covered 11 so far. One is the avyaktam, the basically the undifferentiated or the unmanifest form of the primal energy, okay, also called pradhana. Other than that, the 5 senses, and the not the 5 senses, the 5 mahabhutani, pancha mahabhutani, and the pancha tanmatra. Okay. Certain other references were shared on the group. We will cover that as the session goes, right? So 13 other principles constitute the subjective aspect of the cosmic energy. So in the previous paragraph, he had named the objective aspect. What we would call in modern language the objective aspect of cosmic existence. Objective is the 5 elements and the pancha tanmatra. So always in the, you could say the, I suppose the Indian systems, generally, if you want to use that word, it is divided into subjective and objective. The subject means the one for whom everything is going on, and object means essentially, I mean, in the unified Vedantic sense, his own self projection, which he enjoys, what is called normally objects. Okay? So 13 other principles constitute the subjective aspect of the cosmic energy. Okay, buddhi or mahat. These are 2 words synonymously used. I might say here that mahat is also used for the supermind in the Gita in 14.3 and 14.4. And I mean, there is some connection in the sense that again, I have to make some references to out of this text. But basically on Life Divine, page 278, he makes a table wherein he maps the 4 entities of the higher hemisphere to the 4 entities of the lower hemisphere. And in that, the supermind is mapped to mind. What does it mean for the evolving human being here? That the mind is supposed to become the supermind. That is, the ignorance is supposed to become the complete knowledge, right? The other 3, just to complete, psychic is mapped to Ananda. So when the heart is full of the divine presence, when that presence is found, then there is an inalienable Ananda, which is ruling the being and it cannot be taken away from you. That is that part, counterpart. The vital is mapped to the Chit Shakti, basically perfect force, and the body or matter is mapped to Sat, which is the perfect existence, basically immortality, right? So once again, if you want to, one is like mind to supermind. You could add to that, you could say omniscience. Okay. Then if you say psychic to Ananda, you could perfect delight. And vital to Chit Shakti, perfect force, basically omnipotence. And body to Sat, that means basically immortality. Now, this is the goal of evolution, that we should have perfectly omniscient, omnipotent, perfectly delightful, and an immortal existence. This is and Sri Aurobindo has revealed this in his teachings, that this is where the evolution is heading. So this much just for that Buddhi or Mahat.
Can you please repeat it? Mind is?
So mind so basically Sri Aurobindo divides the cosmos into two parts. He calls them higher hemisphere and lower hemisphere. If you want to understand, I mean, the way I have explained it to myself is, so we use the word Brahmanda, right? The egg of Brahman. Now, if you want, you can imagine a spherical egg. There are spherical eggs of certain species. So that sphere, then you divide it into two, that whole cosmos, okay? Higher hemisphere and lower hemisphere, right? And in the higher hemisphere are these four: Sat, Chit Shakti, Ananda, and Supermind. In the lower hemisphere are mind, psychic, vital, and physical. And the mapping is, so it's like as they come down, similarly, matlab, the last of the four is the supermind, and then the first of four is the mind. So similarly, the second last with the second, the third last with the third, like that. So the mind basically is mapped to the supermind. So what he's saying essentially is that what is the mind? What is the origin of the mind? Okay. Since I'm mentioning, so there is another reference for this in one of the major Upanishads called the Kena Upanishad. There the language that is used is, it says mind of our mind, okay, life of our life, sense of our sense, like that. So what is the mind of our mind? What is the source of the mind? And naturally, what will be the source? That will be the destination. That is what is called by Sri Aurobindo as the supermind or the truth consciousness. In a sense, omniscience, right? So mind, supermind, omniscience, mapping. Psychic being, psyche, that element in us. Ananda, perfect Ananda, Satchidanand mein se Ananda, and वही perfect delight in English. Third, vital, the most troublesome part in the sadhana, basically that way. That is mapped to Chit Shakti or perfect force, or basically omnipotence. And the body or matter to Sat. Sat means existence. So immortality, basically. So that is the goal of evolution. This is there on Life Divine, page number 278. This is the table he has made. Okay. This I just mentioned because the word Mahat came, and Mahat comes in the Gita, and koi confusion nahi rehna chahiye. And yeah, basically it is that Mahat in the supermind which becomes the Buddhi in the human being. That okay. Mahat ko Upanishad mein it is called Vijnana in the.
Could you please repeat the page number?
278.
Yes.
278 in the Life Divine.
Right.
Anmol bhai, this Mahat is something we need to understand. If you distinguish between the mind, see, the mind is, as he says, controlled by Prakriti in the lower hemisphere. So it is the gunas. Like right now, I am inclined, I'm thinking it's me, Yogesh, listening to this lecture of what we are discussing right now. It's a sattvic engagement which is happening. The mind makes you think that you are engaging, but it's already willed and it's happening.
Yeah, correct.
Mahat means now how do we distinguish where is, because there is a clear distinction as per the table that you made.
If you want to connect what we have said so far, you could say that it is, see, all of us have that supermind also in us latent. Otherwise, it could never come out of us, right? So if you take the word Mahat to be supermind in that sense, that all knowledge, it is that all knowledge, you could say, which has inspired your buddhi to attend this session. So when in the Gayatri mantra it says Dhiyo Yonah Prachodayat Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yonah Prachodayat. What is that Savitur? That Savitur is the Mahat. That Savitur is the sun. It is the symbol of the supermind, the truth consciousness. Okay. What is it saying? Dhiyo Yonah Prachodayat. Prachodayat means propel. May you propel my intellect. So, you could say that it is that Savitur, that sun god, basically, which is the symbol of the supermind, or that Mahat, which has propelled or inspired your buddhi to engage in this text. You could summarize
Right.
it this way.
Right. Because the point I'm making is that the fact that the sun is that luminous oneness
Yeah.
that we talk about,
Correct.
which is where you said when you mapped the tables.
Yeah.
So the moment your awareness goes that it is that oneness which is participating and in delight, because all the three things, the delight is linked to the awareness that it is that entity. It is that oneness which is
Yeah, correct.
participating.
Yeah, correct.
So the moment your mind is the moment you open your mind that it is not linked to the ego consciousness,
Yeah,
it
correct.
is linked to that oneness, that supreme oneness,
Yes.
which is completely luminous, then
Yes.
the activity becomes a delight because
Yes.
you feel the Lord is participating and
Yes.
enjoying this, which
Correct.
is gyan of his own
It
gyan,
is the Lord
right?
who is participating as, like there is a phrase in one of the essays of Sri Aurobindo, I think Moksha is the name, that it is as if one actor could play different roles, not in succession, but at one and the same moment. So the
Right.
same actor, the same Lord is whatever, how many people are there in the session now? 11 people. So it is the same actor which is playing 11 different roles, but it is the same actor and he's not doing it successively. He's doing it simultaneously.
Right. So that's the flip. The only linking is the moment it is linked to ego consciousness,
Yeah.
then it gets linked
Then
to
the
the three
division
gunas
comes
and
and then
mind.
how? Yeah.
Correct. But the
Yeah.
moment you bring in the awareness that it's the Lord, the
Yeah.
oneness, the luminous Lord, then
Yeah.
it becomes Mahat.
Yes. You could say,
Okay.
but here in the Sankhya, Mahat means Buddhi only. I just mentioned all this so that clarity rahe ki where Mahat means what. In the Gita,
Okay.
in 14.3 and 14.4, when they say Mahat Brahma, it does not mean Buddhi. There it means supermind. Okay. Because just for the sake of clarity, in Puranas, it is called Mahar Loka. Okay. Like that. So Bhu,
Right.
Bhuvaha, Swahaha, Mahaha, Janaha, Tapaha, Satyam. That is the names of the lokas in the Purana. So just to be clear, just to be clear, I need not
Correct. And the
step by step.
Gayatri is when you quoted and you explained the Gayatri mantra,
Yeah.
the Gayatri mantra is telling that let my intellect
It's a prayer.
be.
It's a prayer
Yeah.
to that luminous source, the sun, that may my intellect, my dhi, may it be propelled. Prachodayat. Pra means forward. Chodayat means to move. उसको आगे बढ़ाना, उसको press करना, impel करना. So may that divine light impel my thoughts. May that divine light be the inspirer, the propeller of my thoughts, of my
Right.
buddhi. That is what it is saying.
Beautiful. Thanks.
Welcome. 13 other principles constitute the subjective aspect of the cosmic energy. Buddhi or Mahat. There it is called Dhi in the Gayatri mantra. There the word is simply Dhi, but वो एक ही चीज है. Here it is called Buddhi in the Sankhya. Ahankara, yeah. Ahankara, literally as I have said earlier, Aham means I, Kara means do. I do. That sense that I do. And वही 3.27 of the Gita, Ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. ठीक है? Manas. Manas is the sense mind. Indriyanam manaschasmi. Among the Indriyas, I am Manas. And it's 10 sense functions. 5 of knowledge, 5 of action. So, like you could imagine that it is there in the middle and 5 inputs and 5 outputs are going from the same entity. But this is the significant one because if it is not active, then the 10 senses have basically no power of their own. It is the manas which gives power to the jnanendriyas and the karmendriyas. That way. Without them, they are useless, kind of. Okay. Manas, mind, is the original sense which perceives all objects and reacts upon them. For it has at once an inferent means incoming, and an efferent activity. Yeah. Basically, I mean, I had read this word first time, efferent vagara, in 10th standard biology, when, they say that the signal going towards the brain from the organs, that is called inferent, and the signal coming from the brain towards the organ, that is called efferent. That is what I remember. E matlab basically out hota hai, to coming out of the brain, like that. So that is like the origin of
This
the
is similar to egress and ingress,
Haan.
inward and
Yeah.
outward.
Yeah. So
And
for it has at once an inferent and an efferent activity, receives by perception what the Gita calls the outward touches of things, bahya sparsha, and so forms its idea of the world and exercises its reactions of active vitality. But it specializes its most ordinary functions of reception by aid of the 5 perceptive senses of hearing, touch, sight, taste, and smell, which make the 5 properties of things their respective objects, and specializes certain necessary vital functions of reaction by aid of the 5 active senses which operate for speech, locomotion, the seizing of things, ejection, and generation. Yeah, so when he says here, it specializes its most ordinary functions of receptions by aid of the 5 perceptive senses. So in yogis, in whom the manas can act independently of the senses, जिसको clairaudience बोलते हैं, hearing at a distance. Now it is obviously not this physical ear which can hear at a distance of 10 kilometers, let's say. So in them, that those inner powers are developed, the inner powers of the manas, by which this kind of phenomena also can happen. So hearing at a distance, seeing at a distance, communicating at a distance, even like जैसे यहाँ पे जो seizing of things वाला है. So there is an example from the mother's life. This is sort of part of the occult domain, wherein these powers are sometimes they develop naturally in the sadhak. Some people who pursue occultism, they pursue them independently like that. So in the mother's case, she was in Algeria with her occultism teacher, and she appeared to a group of friends in France, and she held a pencil with her hand and she wrote something. She was just checking whether this kind of thing is possible or not. Once she was satisfied that this is also within the powers of a human embodiment, she did not pursue it further. But I just basically am highlighting that word aid over there. But it specializes its most ordinary functions of receptions by aid of the 5 these senses. So normally in normal human beings, it happens by the aid of these, but as the powers of the human being develop, it should be able to do without the aid of the senses also. Okay. But otherwise it's quite simple. जो यहाँ पे है hearing, touch, sight, taste, and smell, which make the 5 properties of things, and operate for speech, locomotion, the seizing of things, ejection, and generation. These had been mapped, I had shared on the WhatsApp group to the corresponding elements. I mean, that's quite, there's nothing really that needs explanation over there, right? Buddhi, the discriminating principle. हाँ, so discriminate normally means separate. कि इसको अलग करना उससे अलग करना. Viveka basically. Buddhi, the discriminating principle, is at once intelligence and will. It is at once intelligence and will. It is that power in nature which discriminates and coordinates. It is that power in nature which discriminates and coordinates. Ahankara, the ego sense, is the subjective principle in buddhi by which the Purusha is induced to identify himself with Prakriti and her activities. Ahankara, the ego sense, is the subjective principle in Buddhi. So another link which was shared there, which was for the mapping of the 3 gunas with the 24 tattvas. So in that also the sequence was there. So first there was the Buddhi. From the Buddhi came the Ahankara. Then from the Ahankara, there are 3 types of Ahankara. So Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. And then Tamas say the Panch Mahabhuta and the Pancha Tanmatra एंड बाकी रजस का सब में रोल था एंड सत्व का रोल इसमें ऐसे करके सारा दिया हुआ था. सो बट दिस इज इंपॉर्टेंट फ्रॉम द पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू ऑफ लिबरेशन. धवल भाई हैज अ क्वेश्चन. धवल भाई.
हाँ सॉरी आई वाज स्पीकिंग ऑन म्यूट. हाँ
बोलिए.
एक यहाँ पर ही सेइंग बुद्धि the discriminating principle is at once intelligence and will. और normally इसको हम translate करेंगे will is a force, no? will force है जो तो इसमें
will is इच्छा.
will is अच्छा इच्छा, not the will force. will को force नहीं कहेंगे हम.
force के लिए the word is शक्ति.
okay ठीक है. okay because
will comes from
विल पावर बोलते हैं ना हम. विल पावर बोलते हैं तो वो क्या हुआ.
विल के लिए हिंदी इक्विवेलेंट वर्ड क्या होगा. इच्छा होगा ना.
हाँ इच्छा होगा, बराबर है. तो विल पावर बोलते हैं यू आर लैकिंग विल.
इच्छा शक्ति.
इच्छा शक्ति. ओके ओके ठीक है. ओके.
अहंकार, द ईगो सेंस, is the subjective principle in buddhi by which the purusha is induced to identify himself with Prakriti and her activities.
Anmol bhai, this intent is a very important thing to clearly understand, because what this is saying is that on this call, if I identify myself as Yogesh, the fact that I intended, the intention to join this call was a sattvic quality which has been developing in me. And so what it says is, if you are inclined to being sattvic, it will drive you more and more, because that is your buddhi, and the intent is coming from there. The source of the intent is the buddhi, and the buddhi is driven by the 3 gunas. So the more you participate, if it was maybe an activity of sport and it was rajasic, then that is, or making money, my intent is being driven by that by itself, by Prakriti.
Yeah.
Whereas if it is an intent of wanting to be closer to that oneness, and that is what is something that is driving my action, the intent is actually automatically being driven by Prakriti. It is sattvic nature which is taking you forward, as long as you've identified yourself as Yogesh. The moment you cut
in
this
what
loop,
we have read.
Correct? Am I interpreting it right?
Yeah, correct. But where is the word intent in what we have read? I am not able to see
when
it.
you said the 2 words of buddhi, intention.
Intelligence
if
and
you
will.
see, will isn't will intent. What is your will? What is your intent?
Correct.
Will is your intention. The fact that you join.
The fact that we are here, we have applied our will to be here, so that we can get some clues how to be liberated from the lower nature. Correct.
Absolutely. And he says you're bound. The intent was driven by my thought that I'm Yogesh and I should learn and get to be closer to you, my Lord.
Yeah.
That is the chain which is binding me. Because I've identified with the ego thinking I'm Yogesh. Actually, it is Prakriti which is playing this guna of Sattvic.
Yes.
And it is sharing this knowledge. And if you just take the gaze towards the Lord, towards the oneness, you realize it's the Lord who's enjoying this play of wanting to have this knowledge being shared in this community of not just me, but the 11 people who are participants.
Correct. Absolutely correct. So it is ahankara, which is the cause of the bondage, basically. So ahankara, the ego sense, is the subjective principle in buddhi by which the purusha is induced to identify himself with Prakriti and her activities. And this ahankara is basically threefold: sattvic, tamasic, or rajasic. But these subjective principles, and that is why, what does yoga mean? The dissolution of ahankar. Union means that. when that knot of ahankara is loosened, then you are back into the oneness, the unity. The ahankara, the ego sense, is the subjective principle in buddhi by which the purusha is induced to identify himself with prakriti and her activities. But these subjective principles are themselves as mechanical, as much a part of the inconscient energy as those which constitute her objective operations. One second. But these subjective principles are themselves as mechanical, as much a part of the inconscient energy as those which constitute her objective operations. If we find it difficult to realize how intelligence and will can be properties of the mechanical, inconscient, and themselves mechanical, jada, we have only to remember that modern science itself has been driven to the same conclusion. That's what modern science basically says now, that what you call intelligence is nothing but it's some sort of chemical reactions which has happened in the course of evolution. And I mean, it's just going on. It's just mechanically going on. Uske piche kya hai, that they don't know, right? Even in the mechanical action of the atom, there is a power which can only be called an inconscient will. And in all the works of nature, that pervading will does inconsciently the works of intelligence. It does not do it self-consciously. It's not aware exactly why it is doing it, or even if it is aware, it is not fully aware. So therefore, it is called inconscient. Even the intelligence that we have. So we are somewhat conscious of what we are doing, why we are doing things. But are we totally conscious? We are not. Because that total consciousness can come only with the enlightenment, with the, passing beyond the buddhi into the purusha, right? That pervading will does inconsciently the works of intelligence. What we call mental intelligence is precisely the same thing in its essence as that which discriminates and coordinates subconsciously in all the activities of the material universe. And conscious mind itself, science has tried to demonstrate, is only a result and transcript of the mechanical action of the inconscient. Right? But Sankhya explains what modern science leaves in obscurity. The process by which the mechanical and inconscient takes on the appearance of consciousness. It is because of the reflection of Prakriti in Purusha. The light of consciousness of the soul, capital S, is attributed to the workings of the mechanical energy, and it is thus that the Purusha, observing nature as the witness and forgetting himself, is deluded with the idea generated in her that it is he who thinks, feels, wills, acts, while all the time the operation of thinking, feeling, willing, acting is conducted really by her and her three modes and not by himself at all. To get rid of this delusion is the first step towards the liberation of the soul from nature and her works. Why science misses this? Because अगर इसके बिल्कुल roots में जाएंगे, I can go there a little bit what I know. Basically because it is atheist. It has Sri Aurobindo observes. Modern science has taken origin in Europe, right? So he observes that at the time of the great Greek philosophers, Socrates and Plato and Aristotle, basically, at that time, there was a bifurcation in the reasoning part of the human consciousness and the religious part. And the phrase that he uses is the insufficient religious sense of the Greeks. This is the exact phrase, the insufficient religious sense. That is why there was a bifurcation. So again, science का जो सारा हुआ था in the what they call the Renaissance, it happened basically as a revolt against the what they perceive to be the tyranny of the church and the religion, etc. So in India, that problem has never been there. वो तो हम, because we are so happy to ape the West, that is why, fashionably we are like, no, 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 I am a rational man, therefore I don't believe in God. So this was never an Indian problem. ये समझने में भी time लगता है, because our education is so westernized that we also tend to have this. It's a very fundamental problem in the human consciousness. This division of reason with God. There is no such division.
Anmol bhai, this is exactly, that is the material mindset. No, material is the only devta, monism, material monism, which Sri Aurobindo uses as a word, right?
Materialism, basically.
Huh.
Only matter exists, and everything is just a product or a byproduct of matter. Even your intelligence is coming out of that mechanical matter, and there is nothing else.
Correct,
There is
correct.
something else. That is what the Sankhya is saying. There is that thing called the Purusha, who is perfectly conscious, from whom the whole game is going on. Basically, who is conscious. Again, I cannot say perfectly conscious, because, as he said earlier, that Anumati giving of the Purusha is also sort of, matlab, he sort of helplessly gives that. So वो clear नहीं है that way.
Yeah,
But
but
at least that element of consciousness is there.
but still science is still using physical instruments and tools,
Yeah.
because it cannot admit
Yeah.
this
Yeah, yeah.
subtleties. No, that is the real reason, that
And
if
the
it's
reason, again, usme bhi, see, does the scientist not have God in his heart?
no, I'm not saying that way. He
I'm not-
does have,
Yes.
but the problem is he is not able to, either due to fear,
Not able to, because his value system and his whole context of society in which he is placed, it does not allow him to believe in God.
Exactly.
If he starts believing in God, then he will be looked upon as a sort of
He will be outcast.
apostate.
He'll
He
be
will be looked
outcast
upon. Science in that way is its own religion.
Huh.
And if you are looked upon as a believer in God, then the rest of your scientific community will regard you as an apostate. What is this? What has happened to you?
Correct.
The main tenet of science was that there is no God and we are going to analyze the whole of world. In fact, there is a very beautiful poem of Sri Aurobindo called A Dream of Surreal Science. It's a sonnet. Worth reading actually in this context before we move to the next. Should I just read it?
Please read, because
very enjoyable. You will not forget it ever.
Until God is not admitted into by science, I don't think so science will come to this conclusion.
Those who have read the poem can also again enjoy it again, but those who have not, I mean, अंदर से कुछ liberation सा हो जाएगा after reading this.
Please read, because I haven't read it. I am hearing it for the first time.
You have not read it?
No.
I'm surprised. Anyway, A Dream of Surreal Science. Somebody would like to read? Archana, would you like to read? Anybody else? Because
I can read, or anybody else can read.
Archana, you read, please.
Yeah. One dreamed and saw a gland right Hamlet, drink at the mermaid, capture immortality, a committee of hormones or the Aegean's brink, compose the Iliad and the Odyssey, a thyroid meditating almost nude under the bow tree, saw the eternal light, and rising from its mighty solitude, spoke of the wheel, an eightfold path all right. A brain by a disordered stomach driven, thundered through Europe, conquered, ruled, and fell. From Saint Helena went, perhaps, to heaven. Thus wagged on the surreal world until a scientist played with atoms and blew out the universe before God had time to shout.
I'm sorry, I could not control my laughter. 1 second. I'm just trying to find out the year in which he has written this. Most likely 1939. When all these experiments were going on and they were trying to make the atomic bomb and all that. A Dream of Surreal Science. Yeah, 25th September 1939 it says. So first is for one dreamed and saw a gland write Hamlet. So Shakespeare कोई महान कवि नहीं है, playwright नहीं है. He is merely a gland. Okay. One
यहाँ
dreamed.
personification किया
It's
यहाँ
an
पर
amazing poem. Unbelievable. In fact, अगर आपको मतलब as a medicine, if you want to medicine उस sense में कि you want to basically disillusion or bring out of that total grip, iron grip of the science. Now, I am a scientific person. I am a scientific person. This poem will work as a wonderful antidote. Okay. Very useful. Share with all your scientific friends. One dreamed and saw a gland write Hamlet. This is a reference to Shakespeare. Drink at the mermaid, capture immortality. अब हैमलेट तो शेक्सपियर है, मरमेड क्या है मुझे मालूम नहीं, बट आई थिंक मरमेड भी शेक्सपियर ही होगा, right? A committee of hormones on the Aegean's brink composed the Iliad and the Odyssey. This is a reference to Homer, okay, the great Greek poet. Iliad and Odyssey are two of his great poems. Okay. Once more. One dreamed and saw a gland write Hamlet, drink at the mermaid, capture immortality. A committee of hormones on the Aegean's brink compose the Iliad and the Odyssey. Next comes Buddha. A thyroid meditating almost nude. मतलब वो कुछ नहीं है, it's just a thyroid. A thyroid meditating almost nude under the Bo tree, जो बोध गया में है, saw the eternal light and rising from its mighty solitude spoke of the wheel, Dharma Chakra, right? And eightfold path, all right. Next is Napoleon, the great conqueror. A brain by a disordered stomach driven, thundered through Europe, conquered, ruled and fell. From Saint Helena. Saint Helena is the name of the prison in which he was there, imprisoned for the last years of his life after he lost the Battle of Waterloo. From Saint Helena went perhaps to heaven, thus back dawn the surreal world. Surreal means sort of unbelievable. Until a scientist played with atoms and blew out the universe before God had time to shout. So this is what the scientists think now. Oh, what will happen? We have made this weapon, that weapon. And because there is no belief in God, kuch aur nahi hoga. There is nothing which will be able to protect. It's all just atoms and molecules and science power and all that. So, yeah. Napoleon के बारे में, I think एक aphorism है, wherein he says, I saw God armed striding through Europe. So उसका एक purpose था, that unification which he achieved, the basically जो क्या कहना चाहिए, the French Revolution, in that the ideas of liberty, equality and fraternity, which were composed in the last decade of the 18th century, it is Napoleon's conquests which kind of carried those ideas throughout Europe, and even till today, there is no proper country in the world whose constitution, whose social ideas are not based on that French Revolution ideas. So Sri Aurobindo regards Napoleon as a vibhuti, not as a tyrant and dictator. But here, that's not the main point. I guess what is the main point here is clear, right? Okay, this is just the materialist's view. The person who believes only in matter, who does not believe in something beyond matter.
This is full chapter on Life Divine for this.
Yeah. And as I'm saying, it's a wonderful antidote because the humor, it just hits so strongly. ऐसे कई सारे श्री अरबिंदो के sonnets हैं.
Very beautiful, yeah.
Very beautiful and very efficient and practical in freeing us from the iron grip of the so-called scientific mentality. I'm saying so-called because science is called Vijnana in the Sanskrit. Science means detailed knowledge. But for that detailed knowledge, first you have to have the essential knowledge, the jnana. And what is jnana? The jnana is the knowledge of the one, of the divine. Unless you have that, how are you going to know the details if you don't know the source? Right? Okay.
So, Anmol Bhai, the will of Buddhi has the capability to enable the person to become the Anumanta who's always looking at that oneness within, right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the capability is in Buddhi only, the will is there, and the will links you to give the operation of Anumanta to say, I will not look at the reflection of the three gunas. I understand that the three gunas are a reflection, but the source is that oneness, which is the Purusha.
Yes.
And the capability to be focused on the Purusha is part of the Buddhi. which is the will.
The capability?
The capability to always be identified with the Purusha within is with Buddhi, because
basically
Hanumanta is
something
giving
in the
that.
something in the Buddhi awakens and it realizes that all this mechanical play that is going on, what is its real purpose? Isko kehte hain turning upon itself. And when that sort of awakening happens in the Buddhi, then you're like, what is the source of all this? ये सब कहाँ से हो रहा है? कैसे हो रहा है? और इसका meaning क्या है? And that first awakening in the Buddhi is what leads you to the this thing, to the divine, to the Purusha. Correct.
बट ये जो आपने बोला टर्निंग अपॉन, राइट, ये तो अपने यहाँ सादे बच्चे को भी होता है.
हाँ तो होता है, लेकिन उसको उतना फिर प्रमोट नहीं करते. एक तो चीज, चिल्ड्रन आर वेरी वेरी 7-8 की एज में, 6-7-8 की एज में बहुत स्ट्रांग होता है दिस क्वेश्चनिंग टेंडेंसी एंड व्हाई इट इज ऑल देयर.
नहीं, ये तो सवाल कोई बच्चा भी करता है यार, ये इसका सबका मतलब क्या है दुनिया में?
मतलब दैट्स व्हाट. एंड यू नो द फनीएस्ट थिंग ऑफ ऑल इज कि इस सब का मतलब क्या है? व्हाट इज द इंटेंशन बिहाइंड दिस मटेरियल यूनिवर्स? Nobody else is explaining properly except Sri Aurobindo. In saying this, I am not trying to promote him. He does not need any promotion. इसीलिए मैंने group पे आज I had pinned that message that all other yogas regard this world as an illusion or a passing phase. The supramental yoga alone regards that. एकदम वो central चीज है. Why are you? There are so many other gurus, you can follow them. Why are you इतना difficult text? And Sri Aurobindo is not that easy to read that way. It is because it is alone he who is having a satisfactory answer for this basic question.
Absolutely.
Right.
So anyway, but Anmol bhai, I'll just add one more point.
Please,
the moment the Hanumanta puts, because at the end of the day, this capability is in all, because Buddhi is with everybody. This intent, because the will is your intention to say that, look, my Lord, it's you, and that Purusha which is residing within. When you start looking at that, you can only, it's digital. Either you can be focused on attention to the Purusha, or you can focus on the persona, which is your ego consciousness doing the activity. It cannot be both.
Correct.
You see, the moment you put your attention that it is the Purusha which is doing, because Hanumanta means that chabi hamare paas hai. Intellect, the Buddhi gives you that key to come out of this. All you have to do is to see that the attention is focused on the Purusha within, because we are listening to all of this. So he's giving you the path, right?
Yes, to the small intimations that are coming from the Purusha within, na? The slight voice of the soul, wo jo batata hai ki, you know, no, not this way, not this way. And it keeps prodding you, what is the purpose, what is the purpose? Ye rigmarole chalta ja raha hai endlessly. What is the purpose? You have to listen to those whisperings. And at a point, start listening seriously. And the moment you look towards it, all the knowledge will start coming from that Purusha. All knowledge is within everybody. कहीं और जाने की जरूरत ही नहीं है.
And at some point, you know, Anmol bhai, these whisperings become a conversation.
Yeah.
ऐसा नहीं है कि ये whispering ही रहता है, one way नहीं है, ये conversation है बाद में. You can ask a question, you get an answer also.
A very simple thing like even Namajapa, let's say, ठीक है? So if you identify the divine within as Krishna, and if you start feeling that it is Krishna who is telling me this, and then you just, even Sri Aurobindo in one of his letters, the word Krishna and Om, these he has allowed in the practice. You can meditate on the word, you can meditate on the idea of the divine as Krishna and Om, etc. Even the mere repetition of the word Krishna can start that conversation. Because, then you're like calling him, Lord, help me. I want to understand it better. And then the answer will come. The conversation can start. Very beautiful, Dhaval bhai. Thank you for
Guru is inside you.
So essentially, iska jo sabse important point tha is paragraph ka, the most important sentence, it was this one. Ahankara, the ego sense, is the subjective principle in Buddhi by which the Purusha is induced to identify himself with Prakriti and her activities. So when this self-inducement is done away with, when the Ahankara is basically loosened, then you come back and you realize that I am that ever-free being, and all this I am doing for my own pleasure, for my own delight. Right? Shall we move to the next paragraph? At least we can read that.
We'll just read this because it's already 9, and if you can respect.
It's 8:53.
हाँ नहीं मतलब we'll not go into explanation, नहीं तो फिर सब घाई में हो जाएगा.
Don't worry.
I don't want to do it in rush here, please.
Don't worry. Okay. Archana ji has read. Yogesh bhai has participated. Dhaval bhai. Who would like to read? Jiti, would you like to read?
No, Anmol, I will not, because I'm working on the phone,
No
I
problem,
can't read
no
it
problem.
properly from the phone.
May I? May
Ha,
I
Mona
read?
ma'am, please read.
Yes.
There
Uh,
are certainly plenty of things from here.
There are certainly plenty of things in our existence which the Sankhya does not explain at all or does not explain satisfactorily. But if all we need is a rational explanation of the cosmic processes in their principles as a basis for the great object common to the ancient philosophies, the liberation of the soul from the obsession of cosmic nature, then the Sankhya explanation of the world and the Sankhya way of liberation seem as good and as effective as any other. What we do not seize at first is why it should bring in an element of pluralism into its dualism by affirming one Prakriti but many Purushas. It would seem that the existence of one Purusha and one Prakriti should be sufficient to account for the creation and procession of the universe. But the Sankhya was bound to evolve pluralism by its rigidly analytical observation of the principles of things. First, actually, we find that there are many conscious beings in the world, and each regards the same world in his own way and has his independent experience of its subjective and objective things, his separate dealings with the same perceptive and reactive processes. If there were only one Purusha, there would not be this central independence and separativeness, but all would see the world in an identical fashion and with a common subjectivity and objectivity. Because Prakriti is one, all witness the same world. Because her principles are everywhere the same, the general principles which constitute internal and external experience are the same for all. But the infinite difference of view and outlook and attitude, action and experience and escape from experience are difference not of the natural operations, which are the same, but of the witnessing consciousness, are utterly inexplicable except on the supposition that there is a multiplicity of witnesses, many Purushas. The separative ego sense, we may say, is a sufficient explanation. But the ego sense is a common principle of nature and need not vary, for by itself it simply induces the Purusha to identify himself with Prakriti. And if there is only one Purusha, all beings would be one, joined, and alike in their egoistic consciousness. However, different in detail might be the mere forms and combinations of their natural parts. There would be no difference of soul outlook and soul experience. The variations of nature ought not to make all this central difference. This multiplicity of outlook and from beginning to end, this separativeness of experience in one witness, one Purusha. Therefore, the pluralism of souls is a logical necessity to a pure Sankhya system, divorced from the Vedantic elements of the ancient knowledge which first gave it birth. The cosmos and its process can be explained by the commerce of one Prakriti with one Purusha, but not the multiplicity of conscious beings in the cosmos.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
अनमोल भाई, जब ये इतने गुण का कॉम्बिनेशन सांख्य बता रहा है तो फिर एक पुरुष को उसको समझ में क्यों नहीं आ रहा? एनीवे, दैट्स नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन नेक्स्ट टाइम.
Yeah, Anmol bhai, I also felt the same, that knowing after we hear this lecture, if we hear it again and again, the knowing comes easy, but living it is so challenging because these gunas seem to have such a strong control. So how do you, and there was a verse that you had mentioned which says that Krishna Bhagwan says it can be handled, it can be addressed, right? That it is difficult.
Daivi Hesha Gunamayi Mama Maya Duratyaya. He first states the problem statement. Okay? This Maya is basically there. The word Maya means the Trigunatmika Maya, the lower Prakriti of the three gunas. I'm trying to find the verse number over here. Yeah, 7.14. Daivi Hesha Gunamayi Mama Maya Duratyaya. Duratyaya means difficult to cross over. Mame vaye prapadyante. Mayam etam tarantite. I'll just show the verse on the screen, sorry. Is it visible?
Now, yeah.
So, Devi Yesha Gunamayi Mama Maya Duratyaya Mam eva ye prapadyante Mayam etam tarantite. Okay. What does he say? This is my divine Maya of the Gunas, and it is hard to overcome. Those cross beyond it who approach me. So the solution lies in approaching him, I mean, in whatever way, basically, but in approaching that.
Beautiful. Thank
Even
you so much. Super.
Anmol,
yes.
I just want to understand myself,
Yeah.
am I correct in thinking the way I do? Because generally when we are all, we all have difference of opinions, not necessarily everybody behaves in a same pattern. Everybody behaves differently. So
Yeah.
normally my word is, no, it's okay, सबका अपना अपना दिमाग में चिप लगा हुआ है. We cannot expect the other person to behave the way we behave or the way we think. Okay.
Yeah.
And everybody has their own, basically your behavioral pattern is according to your hormones that are behaving inside you, the chemicals that are.
That is purely the scientific view.
So
this thing we would say the samskaras born of the karmas to all जो आपका
yes,
past lives का है, all
yes,
that has gone
and
what has happened in your evolution, that is
yeah,
responsible, and this life's choices are responsible for you acting in a certain way. ये hormone वाला thing, it's a very very superficial explanation. It's just biological, actually, nothing else.
yeah. सबका अपना अपना केमिकल का लोचा नहीं बोलते, केमिकल लोचा है.
जो भी है, हाँ. नहीं, but that is, as I'm saying, that view of things, it is an
It's very
atheistic view, because it does not account for the presence of any purusha within you, right? जबकि the Gita expressly says, देहे अस्मिन् पुरुषः परः, इस देह के अंदर सुप्रीम पुरुषा बैठा हुआ है.
बट आपने अभी तो वो जो पोएम पढ़ी थी उसमें नेपोलियन थायराइड किसको बोला था? बुद्धा को.
I'm showing the poem on the screen.
And the Napoleon was addressed as something again.
Disordered stomach.
Exactly.
अच्छा, आप उसका क्या मतलब समझी?
तो मैं तो यही सोच रही हूँ ना कि अपने अंदर बॉडी के सिस्टम से ही you are doing whatever you are.
नहीं, उसको क्या बोलते हैं? There is a word for this in English. मैं भूल रहा हूँ अभी, एक वर्ड होता है इसके लिए.
Parody.
या हाँ, parody is also one word.
Parody is
नहीं, parody नहीं है.
Paradox.
नहीं, parody is, this is not parody. A piece of writing that copies the style in a funny way. नहीं, copy तो नहीं है. I'm just, मेरे word slip हो रहा है mind से अभी. But it's basically, he is mocking it.
Sarcasm in a way.
Sarcasm. Correct. Thank you, Harish. So it is sarcasm. It does not at all mean that Shakespeare was simply a glad or a...
No. Of course that is there. But कुछ तो अंदर system के अंदर कुछ something is happening in the system,
Yeah, correct.
That
so,
is why the one
body
person
का
is
अपना धर्म है.
हाँ.
The physical body has its role to play, but you're not just the body. Body के फिर सबसे पहले तो फिर वो मनोमया पुरुषा है. That manomaya purusha will control, and then behind that manomaya purusha is the chaitya purusha.
वो तो फिर subtle things होगी ना. These all are very subtle things in your body which I don't think even the science can get to it.
Even the science cannot get to it unless it agrees to go beyond itself.
Yes.
If you limit your inquiry only to physical things, then you will never get the true knowledge.
It has to admit God. It cannot do without it, no?
God though is a discovery. It will make, first thing it has to admit is that there is something beyond itself, and it is reaching that point. some voices say
God bolo, energy bolo, kuch bhi bolo, you know.
Yeah. Many scientists, physicists have been able to reach, Anmol bhai. This much is for sure. Many physicists like Schrodinger and all have been able to reach.
I know. I have read a book called Tao of Physics. I think the man is still alive. And he had an experience of whirlpool of energy at a beach in Miami or California somewhere.
The Dance of Shiva.
हाँ, so उसने बुक लिखी है उसके ऊपर.
मालूम है, The Tao of Physics, beautiful
Fringe of Capra is the name of the author. And in fact, there are 4 quotations from Shri Aurobindo in that book. I think two from Synthesis of Yoga. I think 1 from Letters on Yoga. He has studied Chinese Taoism a lot, and he has he's one of those odd people out in the scientific community who has tried to synthesize God with physics and all that.
No, even Max Planck says this very clearly. Max Planck, even Young came to this conclusion, no? So
most of the Indian scientists, I think they believe in God, don't they? Because they know science only has a certain limitation.
Yes, that is partly because of the Indian genes, partly because of the cultural environment which is there in India. In India, God is in your face wherever you go. You can't escape it. So that way.
Beautiful.
But it's also, I mean, क्या बोले उसको मतलब
नहीं, हमारा साइकी भी वैसे ट्यून्ड है ना. ये हम नहीं तो इंडिया में बर्थ नहीं लेते.
Correct.
And also one, just Yogesh was saying, I remembered Anjali was once saying that whatever path you choose, whether it's it grows wider and wider as you move forward.
Correct.
On that path.
Because I think you get addicted to whatever you do, you know.
Yeah.
Anmol bhai, from knowing to living, I think that's the next step, right? That's what Dhaval bhai says, that knowing is the first step, then living, then being. To go from knowing to living, there was another verse in the Gita which said that the mind is difficult to control because we were to put our mind on Purusha, but it goes into these Maya, and he says, but there is a way by which you can control the mind and you can achieve. So what is that verse? And if you could please translate that.
I'll show it on the screen and then we'll close. So it's there in the 6th chapter. number 33 and 34 is the question of Arjuna. And then the following 2 verses is the reply of Shri Krishna. He says here, Arjuna Uvacha, Yoyam yogastvaya proktaha samyena madhusudana etasyaham napashyami chanchalatvat sthitim sthiram. Okay. Basically, Arjuna said, this yoga of the nature of equality, samya ka matlab hai equality, which has been described by the O Madhusudana, I see no stable foundation for it owing to restlessness. Chanchalam hi manah Krishna pramathi balavadridham tasyaham nigraham manye vayo riva sudushkaram. Restless indeed is the mind, O Krishna. It is vehement, strong and unconquerable. I deem it as hard to control as the wind. Okay. Then the reply comes, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, Asamshayam Mahabaho Mano Durnigraham Chalam Abhyasena tu Kaunteya Vairagyena cha Grihyate. The Blessed Lord said, without doubt, O mighty armed, the mind is restless and very difficult to restrain. But O Kaunteya, it may be controlled by constant practice and non-attachment. So, Abhyasa, which means practice, and repetition basically. Doing whatever is your spiritual practice constantly to the point where it starts happening incessantly. Okay. And detachment, non-attachment. And let's see what is there in the next one. Asamyatatmana yogo dushprapa iti me matihi vashyatmana tu yatata shakyo vaptum upayatah. By one who is not self-controlled, this yoga is difficult to attain, but by the self-controlled, it is attainable by properly directed efforts. So herein the importance of self-control, Indriya Nigraha, Mano Nigraha, etc. All that is there before this.
And Anmol bhai, even in 12th chapter, she says, no, Abhyasa yogena tato mam ichhaptum dhananjaya.
Yeah, Abhyasa. The answer in 2 words, Yogesh bhai, Abhyasa and Vairagya. So constant practice and detachment.
Anmol bhai, if you could read the last verse again, because I think that is where he says it's mechanical control of the Anumanta. If you read the last one, he says, just read it again, please.
This one, which I am showing on screen. The one I am showing on screen?
Yeah, the one you just read, right? So,
asamyatatmana yogo dushprapa iti me matihi vashyatmana tu yatata shakyo vaptum upayatah. By one who is not self-controlled, जिसका खुद पे नियंत्रण नहीं है, this yoga is difficult to attain. But by the self-controlled, it is attainable by properly directed efforts.
So with self-control and properly directed efforts, is this answer linking it to being a mechanical Anumanti? The Anumanta is supposed to be mechanical, right?
Anumanta means that self-controlling has started happening, wherein you are starting to control the movements of your nature.
Right. So it links it directly to that path where he says that if you are the Anumanta, then you'll always be directed to the Purusha within.
Exactly.
And this is the practice, and you've given the method and these two steps.
Yeah.
So this will enable us to go.
And Vairagya. Right. Abhyasa and Vairagya. Constant practice and detachment. I'm just showing again here these words. This one. A constant practice and non-attachment.
Correct. Because knowing is no fun. I mean, till you don't start living it,
exactly.
It is just, you feel good, but you don't see any change in your...
See, that is why different people do different things. So somebody, he might use a divine name. वो पूरे टाइम उसको अपने अंदर चलाने की कोशिश करता है. That is one way. Somebody might try to practice the witness consciousness all the time. ठीक है? For that, they might take the help of just observing your breath. And whenever you fall, मतलब lose your awareness, again you come back and hold the breath. So again you are in awareness. So by this constant practice, ठीक है? Somebody might try to keep his awareness all the time above the head. कुछ भी हो सकता है. You might try to keep your focus in the heart, concentrating on the divine in the heart, depending whatever one is capable of. But some kind of constant practice has to be there. Even while sleeping, the yoga has to go on. If during the sleep the yoga falls, then again a lot of hard work which had been done during the day, that will be gone. And again, थोड़ा सा उसमें loss होगा, and again you have to start. So that constant practice. इसमें एक ही बस जो catch है, वो ये है कि all this is the part in the Gita where that self-effort and all that is mentioned. Okay, but जो गीता में एक वो grace का element आता है ना, from the 12th chapter onwards, and then in the 18th the Mahavakya, where he says Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. If you take refuge in the divine, if you call to him, with that spirit of total surrender, कि बस मुझसे इससे ज्यादा नहीं हो रहा, I am at my wit's end, you please help me. Then when that point comes truly, then things become easier. In yoga also, it is the divine who is the sadhaka and the sadhana. So the more we can, by our efforts and by the grace of the divine, start feeling that it is the divine who is the sadhaka. और ये ज़्यादा time नहीं लगता है. I mean, the supramental is working. It is working very, very strongly. I mean,
Anmol bhai, if you allow me, I'll tell you two things here.
I basically said what I wanted to say.
I'll just add two things to this. One, this individual techniques which you just mentioned, right? It can happen in the same individual at different times.
Yeah.
And secondly, unless we don't make that personal effort, वो joy of surrender नहीं होगा. वो surrender बहुत फुसिया surrender होगा, मतलब फुस वाला.
And actually speaking, it is not possible to practice anything constantly. Possible ही नहीं है. Theoretically, practically impossible है.
हाँ नहीं, मैं कहने का
it can happen only when you are connected to that sort of infinite source of energy and you become aware of some kind of yoga process going on inside you constantly. आप कर ही नहीं सकते जब तक वो आपका union divine के साथ establish नहीं होगा ना in some way, वो possible ही नहीं है. That is why there is ultimately only one thing left for the sadhak to do. Just fling yourself into the lap of the divine. आप बस अपने आप को उनके अंदर डाल दो. Just immerse yourself. Through the power of aspiration. This is what Sri Aurobindo says. Aspiration, rejection, surrender. उसमें, of course, you have to aspire and reject, but वो total surrender, total abandonment of yourself into the hands of the divine. उसके बिना नहीं होता. That is the most powerful practice, if you want to call it a practice.
नहीं, I agree with you. मैं ये कहना नहीं चाह रहा था. मैं ये कहना चाह रहा था. See, practice is, you're right. It cannot happen without that consent of the higher will. But what I'm trying to tell you is कि अगर हम ऐसे ही surrender करेंगे ना, तो वो sort of
वो तामसिक सरेंडर वाला।
राइट, दैट्स द
तभी
राइट
तो
वर्ड।
मैंने बोला ना कि वो गीता के लेटर पार्ट में है, जो मैंने 12th चैप्टर मेंशन किया है भैया। इस वर्ष के बाद पूरा वो,
क्योंकि जब हम पूरा थक जाते हैं ना पर्सनल एफर्ट करने के बाद, और सच में जब कुछ नहीं रहता ना, आई रियली गिव अप, यू रियली गिव अप।
माइंड यू, द 12th चैप्टर इज देयर आफ्टर द 11th चैप्टर, और 11th में वो विश्वरूप दर्शन उसको ऑलरेडी हो चुका है। ही हैज बीन ब्लोन आउट ऑफ हिज विट्स बिफोर ही इज गिवन दैट। तो यू नो, उसके पहले वो सेल्फ एफर्ट लगता ही लगता है। अभी अगर हम स्टेप बाय स्टेप लेकर के चले, फॉर अस दीज आर द टू कांस्टेंट वॉचवर्ड्स, अभ्यास, वैराग्य।
करेक्ट,
अभ्यास, वैराग्य, इवन स्टूडेंट्स के लिए।
I agree with Dhaval Bhai कि it's difficult maybe as beginners to stick to one thing. So there is the name chanting also going inside, watching the breath also, which is happening.
Absolutely.
And so we are doing everything simultaneously.
Absolutely. So then your practice is a composite of all these things, but that constant practice is going on.
Yes.
So even while in sleep, if the consciousness can become awakened, that I am not going into a totally dull and tamasic sleep. Even in my sleep, I am somewhat aware. Even in my sleep, अभी मेरा तो आज तक तो कभी नहीं हुआ वैसे, but even in your sleep, if you can become aware of your breath, let's say, you are sleeping consciously, then दिन भर में जो कमाई की है वो सारा lose नहीं होगा.
No, but I have seen this. If I offer myself at night when I'm going to sleep, before sleeping, and next day morning I wake up somehow very tired, very exhausted, and I can't figure out why that happens.
If you have done what?
At night, I have tried this many times. I offer myself to the divine before sleeping.
Acha.
And at morning, I feel as if I have not slept. I feel very tired. So I think there's something
that should not happen. That should not happen. If you are going into sleep in a state of prayer, offering yourself completely to the divine will, vagara, then basically that entry into Satchidananda, which is only for 10 minutes, that will not take 3 hours or 4 hours as it usually does for a person. It will happen faster. Because आपने वो process of going towards the Satchidananda पहले से initiate कर दिया ना. So on the contrary, you will have, let's say, a lesser time duration of sleep. 6 hours की जगह 4-5 hours होगा, and you will wake up more refreshed than usual. So I mean, I am not able to understand कि ऐसा क्यों हो रहा.
I'll try that again.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
There's beautiful line which Swami Vivekananda says. I don't remember the exact line. Temples, books, and other things are secondary. The first, either by this or all of this, or combination of the above.
You have to first basically, arrive at some kind of a constant feeling of the divine within you, some kind of awareness in whatever form. चाहे वो knowledge के form में हो, भक्ति के form में हो, शक्ति के form में हो, doesn't matter in what form it is. But वो एक constant होना चाहिए. It has to become totally all occupying. Otherwise, it will not happen. So, yeah. And detachment जो दूसरा part है कि non attachment, राग नहीं करना, किसी चीज में इतना संलिप्त नहीं हो जाना कि you forget. That's what ना, the Purusha through the ego inducing himself in the movements of Prakriti and getting totally अनुरक्त in that. उसके अंदर पूरा राग हो.
ये थोड़ा राग नहीं बोल सकते, पर देखिए हम जब कॉन्सेंट्रेट करते हैं किसी चीज पे तो हम उसमें घुस जाते हैं, तो वो एक्सक्लूसिव कंसंट्रेशन तो किसी भी काम में बनाना पड़ता है. तो क्या उसको आप लाइक बोलोगे?
कंसंट्रेशन के पीछे यू हैव टू कीप द अवेयरनेस ऑफ द डिवाइन.
हाँ, वो बराबर है, राइट.
द पुरुषा हैज नॉट टू फॉरगेट दैट ही इज द पुरुषा, जिसको बोलते हैं ना जोश के अंदर होश खो देना. लैंग्वेज आई एम टेलिंग यू, कुछ नहीं है. और दैट जोश इज द प्रकृति, दैट होश इज द पुरुषा.
नहीं, true what you are saying is true. वो background में that should be there. Correct.
So we'll close. Archana ji has posted lines, I think from Savitri. Then by a touch, a presence or a voice, the world is turned into a temple ground and all discloses the unknown beloved. Wow, fantastic. Can you please also paste these lines on the group and give the link to these?
What has been decided for the, like what Dhaval Bhai was proposing?
I don't know actually. We have not discussed. Some people have already left.
Okay.
He was not so much saying, it was just like a personal this thing. Is anybody else also feeling that this is too heavy and it should be held only once a week? My feeling is that it should be held twice a week for the simple reason, वो एक हफ्ते में बहुत ज़्यादा gap हो जाता है and then
Correct.
it is
I feel the
difficult to
same,
continue the
Anmol bhai.
thread of the study.
Once a
I
week means that
also
there's no
think
rhythm at all. I think
No
at least
rhythm at
twice
all.
a week.
No rhythm at all. Twice a week is a
Without
minimum,
that,
I'd
it
say.
just doesn't work.
twice a
Yeah.
week is okay.
And actually, if there is a gap of like 2 days, 3 days, and if you can take out even 1 or 2 hours, then it's not that problematic also. Itna bhi wo nahi hai, we can just reflect and be quiet and silent. Itna problem nahi hoga. This is what I feel. So anyway,
Are
so
we going
will
to
we meet
meet
on
on Wednesday?
Wednesday for the Gita chanting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. We have 2 yeses. That means we'll meet.
Yeah. I
Okay,
just
we'll
hope
close
I
with silence.
Yeah.
1 minute.